And we are live. Yo, check it out. This is DJ L7. Today I have a very special guest. I'm very excited to have a presidential candidate here on the show today, declaring early, getting ready to go. Um, Actually, why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about who you are.
Yeah, hi. My name's Albert Harshaw. I am running for president. Uh, I filed my papers back in March. I have support in multiple states. I definitely have some policies I want to take care of for the betterment of our country within education, medical, defense, things that have been going underneath the nose that we need to worry about today, not tomorrow. Uh, we need to get back to being ourselves, which we've gotten away from for a long time. And I'm sure it'll come out as we discuss this. We need to remember who we are as a people. We don't do any of that anymore, sadly. Uh, we need to get back to integrity. We need to worry about, educating our young and letting them grow up to a point where they can be productive in society as intellectual selves, which we've gotten away from. We need to bring back that inside. I served the United States military since 1994. I served in Bosnia, Slovenia, Croatia. Then in the 2000s, I served in Iraq and Kuwait. I was a firefighter before that. I had my state seal from the then Governor Christie Whitman of New Jersey. So yeah, uh, Chris Christie ain't the only one from New Jersey.
What are your
um,
Okay, so
so
what?
I mean that's just a touch up on me.
Okay, so those are your big goals, like to get like I guess to work on these particular policy issues. It sounds like.
Yeah, actually, I have a lot of goals. I want to get back to basics, reading, writing, arithmetic within education. I want the teachers to be rewarded. I want to reinstill both statewide and national competitions in science, art, music, and writing. I want the teachers, to have a monetary reward and comparable reward to go back to their school and alma mater, of which they're teaching at, and some kind of educational benefit for the student that wins,
Have you worked
right?
on
And
any of
I don't
these?
want the state
Yeah.
levels to be lost out. So maybe the second place winners also get an award. So I have something called the Athena Icarus Awards that I've developed in my policies for that. One set would be for the national winners in each category, and the other one would be for the second runner-ups in state categories. And I chose Icarus and Athena's because one's to Rome, whereas one's to Greece, but they're both of knowledge and education, so it represents. And it's a goal, and it gets away the teachers away from having to worry about policy structuring and policy teaching on ideology, and get back to basics so our kids can become intellectual property of themselves and for our country. We don't have to outsource that anymore.
What do you think? So like it sounds like you have some ideas about education reform as well. You listed a bunch of them. What do you have the most experience? Right? Have you worked on any policy changes before, or what? In what realm do you have the most qualifications to really affect change in? Like I know you talk about your military background. Which realm are you most qualified to really?
Well, I've done a
Uh,
lot. Let's be honest. I've never run for political theater before. I haven't.
okay.
Okay. I just think we're in an inflection point in history where we, the people, have to take responsibility for ourselves. We have to acknowledge we failed that responsibility over the last several decades, you know. So, I don't believe in going around burning buildings. I don't believe in going around beating people up. I think responsibility is where you take stock and accountability and action or inaction, and you address those. And I think we need to get back to where we challenge the notion in the Constitution where we have to rely on politicians or coordinated individuals. And we say the Constitution says a citizen. And normally used to define a citizen as a person who takes responsibility for both community and country. Well, I've done both. I was a firefighter and I was in the military for a long time. So I think this is the direction we need to go. And it's different. The last time this similar challenge was made was in the 1870s. So
Okay.
I think we need to recognize and operate and execute.
Mr. Harshaw, I'll be honest with you, right? Yeah. The thing is that I've seen a lot of, and actually I support a lot of insurgent candidates like yourself, right? That can really drive issues that are passionate about the thing. But the thing is that being an outsider candidate, we look at like people, some of the most famous examples before, like Ross Perot, right? He was a billionaire. He had a lot of money to able, right? Bloomberg, right? Yeah, were able to support their campaigns with a lot of money. How do you, really plan to be heard, right? Yeah, when you are really out funded, or do you have maybe your own source of funding for your campaign?
Yeah, I've been heard. I've been making circuits, and I'm going to be making more. Um, at the end of the day, it's going to be the will of the people. I mean, let's not kid ourselves. I don't view it as an insurgency. I view it as a recognition of what we need to be. And I think sometimes some of us have to stand out loud and clear and show the rest of us the way we're supposed to be. I do believe strongly we've forgotten it. I mean, look at my life. I grew up in a time when my dad worked for AT&T Bell Labs. I remember when the idea of the portable computer was made. It was a simple briefcase with two circuit boards and an airport briefcase that you pack your clothes into, right? And hand-soldered circuit boards, because that's the way they did it back then for prototyping. And one board had keys 0 through 9. The other one was a clunky LED on a circuit board. And the whole concept was it was small, portable, it could be powered, and would operate. And it would register and hold. So you press a number like 1 would hold, 2, and 2 would hold in sequential order, and would hold. They invented the first video phone. And they used to put it in vaults because there was a thing called propagation time at that time. And all that was the time it took factories to tool up, to get the infrastructure in to manufacture and distribute. Back then it was measured in years. Now it's measured in months or weeks, depending on the product. We used to invent things. Now we bring it offshore, and it's not enough to say, with respect to Mr. Trump, and I'll put my disclaimer out after this, that it's not enough to bring back a factory. You have to bring back what's called the manufacturing ecosystem, which includes the R&D, the prototyping labs, the manufacturing, distribution. This way, if something falls apart along that process, they're only minutes from each other. If you bring back just the factory here, the way it's set up now, it takes weeks just to get it one direction and weeks to get it back another.
Okay, can I actually just
So
jump in for
we
a
have to
second? Yeah.
recognize that. And we're getting our asses kicked.
Okay, so
We need to bring
what made
back
me
the
say
entire
is
system. Just
right.
can't bring back one thing.
I don't want to
You
just
know,
defend myself. I mean, like, you're right to an extent, because you are running with the Republican Party. But what made you say that you're an insurgent candidate was I read your candidate declaration statement, which I think is a good read. I encourage people to go to the website. It's AlanHarshawForPresident.com. What is it again?
Albert, yeah, Albert Harshaw for President.com, correct.
Is that the number 4 or FOR?
The numeral 4.
Okay, number 4. Okay, cool. So hope y'all go check that out. And the thing is that you spoke about a message of unity. And you spoke about, right, not necessarily just being like Republican, but appealing to all the people. And there's a lot of people who have this message, right? But unfortunately, the party leaders, they have their own machinations. You can see sometimes party leadership fighting against Trump, right? Yeah, because they have their own plots for power, blah blah blah. And so without like the big monies behind you, right? It kind of, right? I see you with a unifying message. A lot of times people want to rule their little fiefdoms, you know what I mean? So that's what gave me the impression of you as an insurgent candidate, because it seems like you're willing to go outside the box to try to really get
Well,
some
look,
solutions here.
let's be honest.
Okay.
I did not get into this foolhardy or any other false notion. There's only 3 outcomes: win, lose, or lose badly. Those are 3 options.
Okay.
So now I prefer to win. I prefer the American people to win. For once, I would like the actual American people to win. I don't agree with the notion of coordinating somebody, and I don't agree with the notion that we elect somebody because we want revenge. Revenge is not unity. I disagree with Biden on a lot of things. And I disagree with a couple policy points with Mr. Trump and with Governor DeSantis.
Okay.
So,
What are those?
but disclaimer, both elections, I did campaign for and vote for Mr. Trump twice.
Okay.
That's my disclaimer. So personally, I've never met any of these individuals. So I don't have anything negative to say about them as individuals. My disagreements are on policy points. And, like and I'll go through the tier real quick.
Let's go. That's cool.
And I'll start with Mr. Trump. When he made his deal with the Taliban in Afghanistan, that affects me because I was serviced in the Middle East and with people that I know that were there. He violated something called the Daylight Doctrine, which means you do not give your enemy time to rebuild in any format whatsoever. If we're their soldiers, we're there to destroy our enemy, right? We destroy them so they can't come back. If you give them daylight to rebuild, that's counterproductive. So I have a disagreement policy on that. I don't have a disagreement on him as a person. Like I said, I've never met him, so it would be disingenuous to say anything negative.
How do
But it is
you
within full providence
Just want to
that it
just
affects
yeah.
directly the work that me and other soldiers have done over there. So
Okay.
I can have that policy dispute. That's been more than earned, I think.
I really
With
appreciate
respect
your
to
yeah, go ahead.
Biden and his exit from Afghanistan, that was a full-on retreat. We left people behind. And this is what I'm talking about unity and being who we are. We are people that we never left anyone behind. We go back for them, we fight for them, and we reclaim them and we bring them home, right? We don't let people fall out of airplanes. We don't let 13 soldiers get killed because we're afraid to take a shot. That's not who we are. And if we're going to go into theater, we we should have clearly defined goals. They should not be half-assed. They shouldn't be clouded. We shouldn't have had one arm tied behind the other. You know, our mission should be clear, definitive. We know what we're doing when we get there. We do everything that has to be done, and then we get out once that's been achieved. You know, we
Appreciate your
shouldn't do this
sacrifice, Hunter.
half-assed,
Yeah.
clouded business again.
So you're a combat war. I know you're a combat war veteran. You have actually multiple medals from the Iraq time. What about in Bosnia? Did you serve during combat as well?
Yeah, to
Okay.
clarify, none of those are combat awards.
Oh no. Okay.
Yeah, please do not misrepresent.
Oh, I must my
None of them are
mistake. Yeah.
combat awards whatsoever.
Were you involved with in combat though?
I was not in combat.
Oh, my mistake. Okay. So
Yeah,
what are
I've
those
never
awards
claimed
for
to be
then?
that or anything else, and please do not
I'm sorry.
misrepresent
I
that.
heard about yeah Iraq and Bosnia. I know there was like things. We also have stuff from NATO and stuff, right?
Yes, I
Like
have a NATO medal, correct? That because I served on the USS LaSalle, AGF-3 flagship for Sixth Fleet. We had NATO command on board. We did go to Slovenia and Bosnia. We actually went there, but I was not involved in combat whatsoever.
okay, so what you were doing like supply lines or something?
We were a command ship.
Command ship. Okay,
Yeah,
interesting.
we had
All right.
NATO command on board. They had their entire thing on board. Their apparatus was there.
Okay.
Rumsfeld used to pop in from time to time.
Well, I have a personal just hey, I know it's still like stressful situation, but I have a personal sympathy for people that have just been in combat situations. Yeah. Anyways, so the thing is that before you said one thing, I just wanted to get a little bit of clarification on that. You said not allow them to rebuild back, but how would you achieve that?
Well, I'm old school.
Okay.
I think you know if we're going to send our troops to do a job, they should know that at the end of the day, the job was successful and completed. That in my definition, there shouldn't be any Taliban left whatsoever. That should have been the goal. Or if that was unrealistic goal, then the next goal should have been destroyed to the point that they're ineffective and they can never rebuild.
Okay.
You know,
So it's
that level of destruction of your enemy.
okay. So
Okay,
that's for the
that's
American
what should
people
have
to
been
do.
achieved if we were going to be there. If that's not a
Okay.
clearly defined goal, then we should not have been there.
Okay. That's
You know, because
thanks
there's
for
no
outlining
point in
your
going
difference.
doing
Yeah.
something half-assed.
What is
And
there
then,
anything else besides that that you would differ from Trump on? Is there anything
excuse
else
me.
besides? Are there things besides that you would differ from Trump on? You said that's one policy issue. Are there any more policy issues, or is that really the big one?
Well, no, the one bring back the factory. I would have brought back the whole ecosystem. I would have started with what's already here in America, and build the apparatus to support that to be more successful, and then start bringing back other sectors. You know, because I mean, because look the way it is right now. I put trains on the railroad. I worked for Kawasaki rail car, and we put PET trains like on the Path Transit System, MTB in New York City. You know, just on path alone, cars 201 through 302. Those are my babies. I'm proud of those guys, right? So, but what people don't understand is there's an angst with the railroad folks, and it's a proper one, in that we're putting foreign-made cars on American-made steel. Um, so Kawasaki obviously is based in Japan, but Wichita, Kansas, they have a massive factory. I mean, you can put football fields in here, but everything Kawasaki made is made here in America. That's the Made in America clause, but the money still goes offshore. So, you know, if you look at Amtrak and say New Jersey Transit, Alstom's another one, a train company from Canada, and then you got Siemens AG, and Siemens California USA, which are German companies. And then you have another company in France that makes trains for us here as well. And none of these are American built factory trains. They're not, you know. So we need to get back to repatriating what American jobs are. We need to get back to American pride. We need to be able to compete with the world. Yes, trade with the world, but I don't believe we should be part of a world order. We should be ourselves. If we have the material here, we should make it. If we don't have it, we import it. Vice versa. Let them make their stuff, and if we have what they don't have, we'll sell it to them. And that's how the back and forth should go. We shouldn't have to be buying and paying for goods made of slave labor in another country, like i.e. China. Although the China situation is more complex than just that. But I mean, that's the nutshell.
Yeah, there's a lot of weird trade stuff going on. Yeah, and the people at the top are making the money. The international corporations are really making out, and the American people are paying the bill. And it's really not cool. Yeah. So
Well,
appreciate.
it's not just that. You have ESG, which is being managed by an entity within the UN, which are destroying American small business jobs. I'm a small business owner too.
What is
So,
ESG?
like for instance, there was a gentleman in California who was a chimney sweep. He paid about $800 a year for his company's insurance, right? For 15 years, no incidents. He just got a bill under the new ESG guidelines where he got shelled out for $8,500 as a renewal fee,
What is
right?
ESG?
Because of the ESG-C guidelines,
What is ESG?
right? So there's a lot. We have to divorce ourselves from things, and get away from whatever that is.
Okay.
And it's very devilish. It's very very destructive to American jobs because people forget us small business people. We impact multiple sectors. I mean, me alone, I impact somewhere on any given week between 8 and 12 different other sectors, and then other businesses do too. So, say you're a restaurant, that's like 5 or 6 sectors. If you're medical goods, you're probably another 5 and 6 there, right? So we're 60% of the economy. None of the larger businesses exist without us. And if you destroy us, then they're also destroyed equally.
Yeah, that's pretty wild. Yeah. All right. So the thing is that before I dig too much deeper into I just want to get a little bit more idea of your qualifications and who you are. Now I'm going to ask about more policy questions, but before I do that, I'm going to ask. I have other political groups that I work with, and I like to ask their questions first. So my position on these many of these things are mixed, but let's start off with my political allies and ask for number one. I don't know if you've ever heard of someone named Julian Assange. Would you be down for the freedom of Julian Assange?
My interpretation,
Okay.
I know who he is. I dealt with it. He stole secret material and then released it in another country. Correct?
Something like that.
Yeah. Well, there's laws. You just can't steal secret material and walk away and be okay. Because any other one of us would have been in jail forever and a day in a deep dark cell somewhere. So, no, I'm not up on that because
I
the
think that
ends
was
just
actually
justify the means.
the I think he published the information. I think it was the person who did it was Chelsea Manning. I think Chelsea Manning actually did the jail time, but I think that um, Julian Assange was the first to publish the information. I think New York Times and other outlets did publish the information as well, but I think that he did not actually steal the information itself, technically.
Yeah, but he still disseminated
He still
secret material.
disseminated, yes.
The ends does not justify the means.
Okay. Well, just wanted to really, just get your position on that. It's good to know. All
Yeah,
right, so in that,
well, it's a simple logic argument in that if we're going to be the party of law and order, then law and order has to be prevail throughout the day.
yeah, this is right.
So
This isn't about
you
like
don't
what I
get to pick
think,
and
or right, this is
choose.
about what you think. So we're really here to share with my audience, right? Yeah, just your position on different issues, right? So another one that I'm going to be talking about is a UBI, right? How
Is
do you
who?
UBI? I don't know if you heard of something called UBI, Universal Basic Income.
I heard only have heard something called UBI. They're what?
Universal Basic Income. Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah,
Okay.
socialized income.
Yeah. What do
What
you think
about
about
it?
that? Would you be for it, against it? Well, how would you feel about that?
I never understood, nor do I believe in universal income. That's some kind of sci-fi Star Trek stuff that they're trying to propagate.
That's fine. Okay. That's actually accurate in many ways. All right, let's move on, right? Yeah. So the thing is that another group that I work with is people with disabilities. And the thing is that people with disabilities, let's say that right now they're allowed to be paid sub minimum wage. Now, the thing is that I understand that minimum wage is used for different calculations towards poverty and things like that. And maybe, maybe it's true that people with disabilities are less productive. But maybe we could, like, subsidize their income somehow so at least they're making minimum wage. Because I think that's like, if they're doing work, then I'm thinking that, maybe there's a way that we could at least pay them You know, I think minimum wage is not a luxury salary. I think it's a fair salary. What do you think? Would you be a down for minimum wage for
This is
people with
this is actually
disabilities?
a personal thing for me.
Okay.
My wife has partial CP in the legs, always had it all her life. She
Okay.
worked 22 years in the teaching field, uh,
Cerebral
and she
palsy, you
never
mean?
claimed disability, and she
CP?
never took,
CP means
excuse me?
CP means cerebral palsy?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, she has it in her legs. So, and she taught special needs for 22 years,
Okay.
right? So, and she never claimed any special needs.
Okay.
Now, are there people who are disabled to the point where they can't function within a normal society, as compared to somebody without the issue? Yeah. Does there need to be special recommendations? There is, because they already have a law called the ADA. So modifications are made that each business complies with.
Yeah.
We have soldiers who can't go do construction jobs, but they're more than capable to do technology jobs, so they should be retrained. And I think that a fair calculation or calculus should come from what job they did before service or did before the injury, and then calculate that difference while they're going to school. And then once they get the job, then they can get off the assistance,
What about
because
people
a
with like
person's
mental
prize based
disabilities
on
who are
what they
working like
can
in the
make
food
for
industry?
themselves. And 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 the ideal American is one who rises and falls on their own accord.
I get that too. Yeah. But the people like mental disabilities that are working in like factories and stuff.
Excuse me, say
Like
that
there's
over
people with
again.
mental disabilities who are working in like low paid factory jobs who are allowed to be paid like sub minimum wage. But yeah, like in your case, that was actually a wonderful story. There's actually a wonderful story about someone who actually has, was it autism? And that's a very difficult disease, but they're actually a leader in their field. So there are
Who
some
has
stories.
autism?
Huh?
I'm
Autism?
sorry, what was a good story about autism?
There's a lady actually. She designs slaughterhouses, and she's actually a leader in her field because she uses her autism to really
Yeah,
understand.
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, I forgot the name, but
Absolutely.
that's a good story. So
Yep.
yeah,
She made it more. She made the process more humane and less violent for the cows.
yeah. So when I know like different families dealing with autism, it's usually a story I lean on because I know they're going through a lot. It's really tough
Right. And my wife,
for them.
my wife taught them, as part of early intervention,
Yeah,
kindergarten through third grade.
that's cool, man. Your wife sounds like a cool individual. Yeah, and it sounds like
Yeah, and what's sad and that's the other thing too with school reform. Every time, like here in New Jersey, they're stripping money away, and the first ones they strip money from are the special needs children in early intervention programs. And how is that even remotely close to being noble? It's not.
they don't have the political power, so they're just really thrown to the
Right.
side.
Well,
It's unfortunate.
again, this is the problem you get when you have people like DeSantis, a lawyer, and people like Trump, who's rich, and people like Biden, who's a career thief artist. They have no idea what the little guy needs. They have no idea who's actually getting hurt. So, which is part of the reason why I'm running.
Okay.
We need ourselves to run. We know what the effects are of messed up policies are,
So
and good
wait, you
policies.
illustrated some differences between you and Trump. What about you and DeSantis? What are the differences there?
Well, I mean, I think Mr. DeSantis is a great governor for his state, right? And to be fair, he brought his military service into the public market. So let's be fair. So let's do that. So he started 2004, 2005, right? Say, and actually I have it right down. I can look. Um, and he was a lawyer. He did his time in Florida. Then he went to Cuba in '05 or '06 to do with trials and looking out for human rights for the Al Qaeda folks there in Camp X-Ray or whatnot. Um, and then he finally went to go be a uh, pep talk person for the SEAL team who didn't need pep talking. So, um, whereas me, when he was 6, I started in the firefighting service. By the time he was 16, I was already in Bosnia. By the time he was, by the time he got to Cuba, I was already in Kuwait. I had already been in Cuba in 2002. So well before him, I was there for the first wave of incoming detainees. So, I have deep time with respect to comparable service, so, he did half of what I did. So, and I had the world experience, I have a lot of decorations. Some of them are because I spoke some of the languages, because I was the guy who went with Shakespeare book and a Bible, and I used the Shakespeare book to translate languages to learn them better, because what people don't understand is most of the world, as example, and this might be a tangent, but I just want to make the point. When you're trying to translate, most people say to the store went John, and here in America and England we say John went to the store. Well, the rest of the world's on to the store went John. So Shakespeare is the closest thing back time to that. Makes it easier for a universal translation.
Oh, interesting. Okay. I was actually an English major myself, so some of that actually makes sense. Yeah. All right, that's pretty cool, man. Hey, I actually wanted to mention something else. Just was going to bring up the DeSantis thing for a moment because I do actually work with another community. Oh wait, so just to lock down. Okay, so moving on from disabilities.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Okay, yeah. So another community that I work with is actually the trans community. Yeah. So the question is, now the thing is that trans people face a lot of unfairness in their lives, where they've struggled to find work, and where they struggle to find housing. So a lot of times they end up finding themselves like trying to look for public housing. Now let's say that this is a hypothetical, okay? Let's say, for example, that 10% of the people applying for public housing are trans, right? And then we look up some data and we find that only 2% of the people who are applying for 2% of the people in public housing are actually trans. So these people are taxpayers, right? Whether you agree with their lifestyle or not, right? They still deserve fair access to public goods. How will you go about trying to, you know, ensure fair access for people who are, part of the, you know, system, even if they don't necessarily agree with you, or if you do, right?
So let me make sure I understand the question.
Mm-hmm.
You're asking, to be clear, you're saying there's trans people who are not getting fair access to goods and to apartments. Is that the question?
The way I'm setting this up actually brings that into question, right? There's actually a lot of ways. This is actually open-ended question with the different. Okay, please listen carefully because the way that I set up right also brings in possibility your response to quotas and the idea of what you think about quotas. So I said, right, there's 10% of the people who are applying to public housing, right, identify as trans. When we review the data, only 2% of the people, right, yeah, who are in public housing are trans. So we see there's a discrepancy, and then you're being asked to like look into the situation. How do you respond to this type of, you know, some people don't believe in
Well,
numbers, right? They challenge the numbers themselves. You could do that. Maybe you have another bent to this, right? Yeah. How do you approach this type of situation, this hypothetical question here? And by the way,
well,
also ensure for access for people who you don't necessarily agree with, or maybe you do agree with
well.
them.
Okay, so let's tear this apart.
Okay.
So, all right, part one, it doesn't matter who or what you do in your personal life. It shouldn't matter. It doesn't matter. If you're qualified to get a job, get a job. If you have the financial, economic background to get an apartment, get an apartment.
Right.
Okay, those are two. Those are two primers right there. But as far as people being discriminated against, no matter who they are, right?
Okay.
If that's the case, then the state should be compelled to look into it because that's the starting point. You go to your local governments and you say, hey, this is going on, this is a violation of some law. Then it gets brought up. If there's
Mm-hmm.
a violation of law, that should be handled within the legal framework.
Okay.
With because I don't think there should be a questionnaire asking what you do in your personal life. It's supposed to be blind. Same thing with jobs. I don't care
Right.
if you worship green aliens. You know,
Well, that's fine. Yeah.
if you can
Okay.
type buttons on a computer and that's the job qualification, then you should be able to get hired.
So do you think that
You
people
know
should?
what?
Do you think that they should be brought up to 10%? Do you think that is this like is that a dangerous thing to start looking at numbers? Is it like how do
No,
you?
you're asking if we're going to use qualifiers and of personal preferences and lifestyles. And I'm saying no, because that's supposed
Okay.
to be in your personal life. In the public life, it's your job qualification and it's your economic capability to do something, to get an apartment. Those are the only two qualifiers,
Okay. Thanks for
right? And
clearing
that's
that
how
up.
it should
Yeah.
be because that's the anti-discrimination law,
Okay.
right? It doesn't matter who or what you are. You could be Mr. Marvin Martian and still get an apartment, still get a job if you're qualified, but because it doesn't matter if you're green skin or from another planet or if you're trans or whatever else. It
Sure.
doesn't matter,
Okay. Another group that I
because if
yeah.
you're doing that, you're putting them in some kind of situation where you have to worry about percentages, and to a point people could end up discriminating that way as well. And you want to avoid that. And that's why we have anti-discrimination laws. It's so that the individual's capability and means is what is determined, not who, what, and how they exist.
Yeah, this is a very tough question, right? Because even if you try to like build like special housing just for people who are trans, then that could be considered ghettoization, right? So,
Well, no,
and
I don't want to do that and I
discriminatory
think
as
that's
well.
wrong because
So,
now you're segregating them.
yeah,
That's
there's a lot
wrong.
of different. Yeah, there's a lot of it's a
No, no,
difficult question.
I
So,
don't believe in any kind of segregation. It's look, we live on one planet, we breathe the same air. We either have the capability to do a certain job or we don't. We
okay,
either have the money in the bank account to support the purchase of an apartment or we don't. That's all that matters.
okay. Another group that I work with. This is the last group actually I'm going to mention. I think is the right to repair. Have you ever heard of something called right to repair?
The right to repair?
Yeah.
No, I'll be honest, I don't even know what that is.
Okay. So the thing is that
So if you want to
nowadays,
explain that, I'll be able to tear that apart.
okay. So the thing is that when people have like cars and stuff, right? The thing is that before, a lot of car companies make money off of selling service plans and stuff. Like something breaks down with the car and you take it to that, like if I have a Hyundai car, I take it to the Hyundai dealership. You know what I mean, or whatever, right? So the thing is that if but now the thing is the law is that independent repair shops, right, have to be able to access the schematics and be able to get access to parts and things like that. So, this has been standardized already for the car industry, this kind of like right to repair. You're allowed to modify your own vehicle and things like that, right? But the thing for cell phones, right, like iPhones, people will like drop them in water and independent repair shops are able to repair their phones and say, you're good to go. But iPhone has actually a policy of saying, instead of repairing the device, we want you to buy a new one. And instead of fixing people's actual things that are obviously shown to be repairable, they don't repair it. And now what they're doing is they're even going a step further and they're saying that when you buy the phone, right, yeah, your screen has a special code in it that is required to be used with the actual phone device itself. So you cannot change the screen because the phone company is really locking down and forcing people to buy new devices rather than repairing them, even though they're quite repairable. And this is actually extending to now phones. You have to buy subscriptions to like warm up your car seat and all this other thing. And the U.S. military, Biden actually, because of predatory, repair contracts, the military had to fight for their own right to repair their own machines. And McDonald's, how the ice cream never works. That's because, again, this right to repair really did a big. It's worth looking into. So, I
Yeah,
am a
I
supporter of
mean,
right to
I
repair.
agree. If you want to ask in the general, do I
Yeah,
think in that instance, without a deep dive, yeah, I
yeah.
mean that's insane. Why couldn't you? Why should? Because most people can only afford to get one phone, and it's cheaper to repair it. So yeah, you're talking about hurting someone's economic background. So yeah, you should be able to
Yeah, and
repair
when
it
you
in the
buy it, it
general.
belongs to you, and you get to decide what you want to do with it.
Well, yeah, and that's when you got to look at contracts because in some cases I've heard stories too, where especially with Apple, because they have some weird contracts. And in some cases they don't even own the phone. So, which is how it used to be back in the day. Even when I was a kid, the phone company would come in if your phone broke and give you a new clunker phone. And the clunker phone's the old big thing with the rotary dial on it, or the big push buttons and it weigh about 10 pounds. That's
All
a
right.
clunker phone.
Okay, so thanks for asking the questions about some of my, other political allies. Now I'm going to actually just ask about some just general larger issues. And one of them is really you have quite a, background within the military forces, so you have an insider's knowledge of what's going on out there. What's your position on, I want to know, right? This Ukraine thing is going on. You said you did some time in Ukraine as well.
Uh, we visited Ukraine a couple of times, which doesn't count.
Okay.
But yeah, I've been to Odessa a couple of times, and I thought it was a beautiful place. It's sad what's going on there, and it shouldn't be going on there, but it
I
is.
just learned to disregard all information from overseas because I don't trust any of it. Do you think that do you think that people are getting accurate facts about what's going on in the ground in Russia and Ukraine, or you think people are, you or from
Well,
yeah, go
let me
ahead.
ask you a question.
Yeah,
If you're not, are you're there on your show like I'm here doing my thing, right?
yeah.
Do we have access to government files? No.
I'm Korean American. I see how much the
Yeah,
American
I
media
mean,
doesn't
we
talk
see
about
what we see
Korea,
on the news, but we
so
don't
I
have
don't
the
trust
insider
anything.
information. So the answer to that's a given. Yeah, there's stuff
Yeah.
going on we have no idea about. So we're both in that same boat.
Okay. Yeah. But you seem I would hope that you would. I would trust you more than some body who's on the TV, some studio, news reporter
Well,
who's never really
now,
been
if you
there
want to ask me
even.
my
At
opinion
least you've
about it,
been there. At least you talk to
but
people who are around this situation. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Yeah.
So I can give you my opinion,
Sure, I'll
but
take it. I'm not gonna say
my
it's
opinion is
everything, but
this:
it's worth more
I
than
think we had a lot of missed opportunities.
Okay.
I think we're damned if we do, damned if we don't. But there's a few outliers that have to be considered. Yeah, there's a responsibility. Some people could argue, we're indemnified as a result of that trilateral agreement. If they give up their nukes, we would defend them or help them. Now we have to ask ourselves a couple of questions because President Zelensky over there said he was suspending elections. So now we have to ask ourselves some really hardcore, honest questions. One, have we monetarily fulfilled our contract and obligation? Two, is the contract that we made with Ukraine now the same kind of Ukraine, therefore a different Ukraine? Because we're supporting a free democratic nation. If they're suspending elections, that's not a free democratic nation. And let's just be honest, not all nations survive. So if they're going to alter who they are, does that mean our contracts altered as well? And now putting that on one side, here's another question. And we have to be hardcore honest with ourselves. They're a major breadbasket producer for a third of the world. Okay. We're talking Egypt, Israel, Somalia, India, China, even, right? So are we going to, if we do not intercede monetarily or any other means, are we going to be okay with China and Russia being in control of Ukraine and therefore being in control of a third of the world's food source? Even we ourselves get food from Ukraine too. So do we want the Western world in control, or do we want the communist world in control of that food source? That's a question we're also going to have to ask ourselves. And that's something that has to be debated between us, we the people, and Congress. So, and that's the direction I think we need to evaluate.
Okay, interesting to hear your perspective on that. I appreciate that. Yeah. All right. So, are there any other particular, things? Some of my friends, are talking a lot about things going on in Africa. Which are there any other particular international events going on that you might be aware of that the press isn't talking about?
Um, I mean, there's a lot going on. I mean, I've been, one of the benefits with my service, I got to do Unitas and Watson. So I've been all over South America and Africa back in the day. South America, I've been to Tangier, I've been to Tunis, been to Walvis Bay, all great places.
Okay. One thing that I'm actually working with a group called Blexit, and the thing is that probably people, when they hear about black people, they might think about criminal justice reform, things like that. There's different issues that are associated with that, right? Because of the riots, whatever, blah. But what's your take on criminal justice and this what's going on now? Right? People say crime rates are rising in big cities. They're concerned about crime wave, and then there's other people who are saying what's your just take on that whole issue?
Okay. I do have a few takes on that. Um, okay. Which goes back to law and order. I think we're going to be law and order that, and this goes all the way up to FBI, ATF, and everything else like that. I think job one with respect to that particular field, we need to start immediately hiring for Elliot Ness type folks to come in and be in control who care and are allegiant to the law and not to a party. I think also downline, I don't agree with police violence because that's destructive to the community as well. That said, if you're going to be a bad actor and do bad things, big boy rules: do bad things, get bad things. Does that mean police brutality? Absolutely not. That means you're going to get arrested. That means you'll have to stand trial. And if sentenced, then you'll have to do your sentence. But I don't agree with burning down cities. I don't agree with burning down businesses because that causes more economic strife in those areas. And so now you took a bad situation and made it worse because now more people are jobless, more people are hungry.
Yeah.
It's a downward spiral, and so that has to get corrected as well.
It is strange
And
though
if
that our
you,
country, according to the
excuse me,
reports, it is strange though that our country, according to the reports, right, and these numbers might be true, might not be, but per 1,000 people, the U.S. imprisons more people than China, Russia, and a lot of these other authoritarian so-called governments. If you look at the numbers, we're imprisoning like 5 times the amount of people, right, than
Yeah.
other
Well,
countries per
well,
thousand.
just push back on that. We may be imprisoning more people, but those countries you're using to compare with, like China and Russia, they're killing more people
Hmm.
as a means of state sanction,
Interesting.
current crime punishment. So, yeah, I'm going to push back on that.
That's a good
So, are
point.
we
I,
being
I
more
gotta look that
humane?
up.
Yeah, look it up. They kill more people than we do. Their execution rates are sky high. We're amateurs compared to them with that regard, and that's a good thing.
All right, that's a good point. I gotta look that up. That's pretty solid. I like that. Okay, cool. Also, now that we covered the criminal justice issue, let's talk about economics, right? People see Wall Street going out of control. They're very unsatisfied. Bailouts of big banks too big to fail. I never heard it, but that's I don't know.
What, too
I'm not
big to
really clear on that
fail?
one, but
I was
yeah,
always
go ahead.
against that.
What's your ideas for economic reform?
Well, one, government needs to get out of the way of the small businesses. Because I said it before, us small businesses, the ones with 50 or less employees, are the driving force of the economy. None of the other larger businesses exist without us, you know? So, if you got 10 employees, you're still impacting 12 different sectors. And you're talking about millions of dollars over time, right? Millions and millions and millions. So, and that's an upward thing. Biden's worried about trickle down economics. We're worried about upward mobility with economics. And the more regulations government gives, the more restrictive it gets. And also it's getting worse. And there's another destructive economic thing about to occur that's involving with the insurance companies. And again, because of ESG.
Okay.
So we need a global divorce. Is what we need. We need to worry about ourselves, manufacture ourselves, get our economics back up and running, and we need to you know, have people just stay out of our business. We don't need an ESG scoring system. We need to be able to hire qualified people. We can't be worried about some kind of socioeconomic score chart tablature thing that someone made up in another country that lives in another world that lives on a yacht and thinks they know what we need. They don't.
Mm-hmm.
I ran the port of Oswego for a while. So they're worried about green economics. Well, let's discuss green economics. They want us to make less factory stuff here in America because they want us to import it. Okay, great. So it's $40,000 a container, say, right? And it's $1.5 million a day just for a ship to sit out at anchor before they come into the pier and unload, right? And they still got to hook up offshore facilities and everything else like that. But meanwhile, a natural man-made product is still leaking fuels and oils and stuff like that because you can see the slicks in the oceans when you're over there, right? So there's a whole lot of evil being pumped out into the ocean trying to be green, and it's an utter failure. And then two, if they're worried about being green, we have some of the most stringent controls, environmental controls in our factories and outputs and things like that with respect to sequestering and outgassing, right? But those other countries do not. So so let's look at if we're trying to be green because we're outsourcing it, but they're producing 2 to 3 times more evil. And that cloud still travels the earth, so you're still causing 2 to 3 times the harm than you would have had you just made it here to begin with.
I see the problem on both
So
sides, right? Yeah,
they
because you
failed
do
the
have
logic
that,
test.
but we still have people in Flint, Michigan, still like dealing with. I see both sides of it, right? I actually there is a you're right. There is a green industry that's trying to make a lot of money off of people's good intentions and victimizing a lot of people in the way. But also, we do see Flint, Michigan. We do see people struggling with like lead in their water, natural gas, right? Yeah, we see a lot of other problems rising up. So I could see both sides of that.
Yeah, and,
Yeah.
and to be clear, I'm not talking about rogue economics here or rogue manufacturing. I'm talking about responsible manufacturing,
Okay.
ethical manufacturing. Okay.
What about
What
Wall Street
happened
and
in
the
Flint
bankers,
should
though?
not have happened. That was done by a rogue company that thought they could get away with stuff.
Right.
No.
What about the Wall Street and the bankers and the real estate? What about Wall Street, the bankers, and the real estate speculators?
Well, at the end of the day, look, we're we're a proactive money making people. Okay. If we
Okay.
can find a way to make a dollar, we're going to make a dollar. If we're going to find a way to make $1 million, we're going to make $1 million. That's what we do. Hey, there's a mountain. Let's go conquer it. That's what we Americans do. We do it just because.
Okay.
If they're going to make more money, let them. God bless them. It's their God given right here in the United States of America.
Hey, that's
It's my God given right to try and make money too, just like you.
hey, that's cool, man. I appreciate your patience, and just have a couple more issues to ask you about. One of them I'm excited to ask about though is education reform. Now I do have I think Nick from the Young Republicans should be coming on my show soon, And also, we're trying to organize on the last weekend of August. This is for all the people who are watching. We're trying to have a big back to school event, right? And really have students have a conversation just with different political, just to talk about what's going on, right? Yeah, and how they can like fight for their own interests. So, with school coming up, I think in a month or two, and with us playing our upcoming event, it's exciting to share with the presidential candidate here what his thoughts are on educational reform. Go ahead. What are your thoughts on education reform?
Oh, me. Okay, I thought you were saying you're sorry. It's still hard of hearing on this. So I think we touched a little bit back on the education reform with the Athena Icarus Awards. Um, I also think we need to get ideology out of the educational system. I don't think the sex education that they're trying to teach is appropriate. I think there should be some kind of age appropriate involvement. They put pornography under the guise of sex ed, and yet you have to be 18 to buy pornography out in the real world. So there's definitely laws being violated. We need to get what do you call those proactive teachers who think, or administrators who think they can sequester your child and give them gender changing meds when they're not even getting their medical records, so they don't even know what their allergens are. So they're putting children in danger there, just like that. Um, and the other thing too is you have to be 18 to vote. You have to be 25 to rent a car. You have to be 21 to buy cigarettes. And there's no way a child who's still developing, and by their own data research and psychological research, the brain's not fully developed until 25 or 28 years old. So there's no scientific value in trying to get a child that cannot process their own decision making capabilities at 10, 11 years old for gender change modifications. That's not part of education. Education is reading, writing, arithmetic. Here's the goal. It's up here. You have to achieve that goal. Okay? Because we need to get back to having intellectual property of intellectual minds to develop the next generation technologies. We can't do that if we're bringing in foreigners to do that. We have to be able to do it ourselves. We can't have foreign technology in our voting machines. We can't have foreign technology in our cars or in our military infrastructure either. This has to be homegrown, homemade, home programmed.
Uh, that's uh, that's a good take right there. Some I do appreciate self sufficiency and bring things. We see some weakness in our supply chain, and that is a good um, take right there. Now, as in
Well,
terms
it's
of
not
the
just that too.
yeah,
There's billions of dollars a year that gets destroyed in the format of elderly people being taken advantage of by predators, right?
right,
Well, some 60% of it comes from between China, India, and Indonesia,
yeah,
and we need to also assume that our country has four walls and make four walls where none of their information ever leaves this country. That includes their personal data, and that includes their banking information, so they can't be duped, thieved, or robbed of their bank accounts.
okay,
And if they call somebody to order something, there should be going to an American number with an American operator on the other end, and it shouldn't be from somebody from Bangladesh who could steal their credit card information with the scams.
okay,
And it's a huge, huge problem here in America. We need to be looking out for people up and down the road. And we need solutions that are going to work from the top down, bottom up, inside and outside.
okay. So
We're not doing that. We're relying on people who say they're going to do it, but they never lived our life. I mean, look at you and me. You do this when you started out. You probably skipped a couple meals to get the better piece of equipment to make your show better. Uh, how many parents skip a meal so they can get their kid when they're starting out to get their kids that better gift at their birthday, or save up to get that better Christmas gift? Or if you're starting out, money's tight, and you make your own food from flour, eggs, and milk. Right? These guys never knew that. They never did that. They know nothing of our lives. They know nothing what the policies do to us. We do. We know how to fix it ourselves. There used to be a time in my grandfather's day when they had living loans from banks. The way it worked was they didn't give you a lot because they knew you weren't going to pay it back. They gave you a little bit. It was like to start out with to get something for equipment and stuff like that. And then you paid it back by the end of the season. Next year, you got some more. Eventually, he got to the point where he got the whole season up front. And by the end of the season, he would have it paid off. But every day there was food on the table and there was Christmas gifts at the end of the year. Right. So we need to get back to doing that now. And that's part of banking reform. Do I think that if you're going to go get a small business loan, you should take some kind of required class to learn how to money manage your business account? Yeah, because managing your personal account's not the same as a business account management. You take that as a pre-qualifier to show your seriousness. And you start off with a little bit. You don't get it all at once. You got to build up. You got to build trust with them, and they got to be able to trust you. So we need to get
Okay.
back to common sense stuff. We need to build ourselves up.
All right. I do have my own thoughts on this stuff, but really, we're here to find out your thoughts today, not mine. So you do make some good observations, and you are actually I appreciate your perspective on this particular issue. Now, we take a look at if we look at the U.S. budget, one of the largest expenditures is on like Social Security, welfare, these kinds of entitlement programs. What is your take on those types of programs?
Yeah, hold on 1 second. Okay, well, the first thing is Social Security is a contract, and why we're sending Social Security money over to Ukraine, why the government borrows from Social Security and does not pay it back is beyond me. Excuse me. That should never have happened. This is money people spent their lifetimes banking, expecting for when they retired and got older and needed it. And instead, it's being wasted away. I mean, that's something that's supposed to be guaranteed because they paid into it. It shouldn't have been wasted. So that needs to be halted, and that needs to be repaid back. We need government budgets that reflect kitchen table budgets. If we're worried about the high price of milk, eggs, and bread, well, so should they. They shouldn't be making spending wish lists when you and I burn a wish list to keep warm in the winter.
Makes sense to me. All right. Yeah. Let me think about any other particular issues. Educational reform. I think those are really
Yeah.
most of the big, things that the government does. Um, you know, economics and criminal justice and those types of things. Any other particular big issues that you wanted to address regarding your candidacy for office at this time, or other policies you want to talk about?
Yeah, I mean, let's see what we got. We got education. We talked about education a little bit. We talked about finance reform a little bit. Um, you know, you guys can ask me anything. I got a lot. I mean, there's
Okay,
a lot of
well,
things I want to do. I want to
actually,
make
here's
that
actually one of
senior
the killer
citizen
questions
protection
that I
law.
really usually save for the end, right? Yeah. So the thing is
Excuse me?
that one of the things that the American people are really looking for is someone they can trust. Now, a lot of these people out here, right? One of the most popular things about Trump was he said he was going to rip out the swamp. He said he was going to drain the swamp, right? So the thing is that a lot of people say they're going to fight for you, okay? Can you actually talk about a time where you actually whistle blew, or where you actually, right, yeah, had to take on some type of swampy type of, corruption type material? Or are you
I
willing to
mean,
call out anybody or any corruption right now? Go ahead.
well, look, let's put this in a couple of different ways. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
with respect to Mr. Trump and to somebody like myself, and there's millions of others like myself, there's a difference between somebody that carries the shield and is the shield. Many
Mm-hmm.
like myself have been the shield for community and country for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And with respect to Mr. Trump, while I was in service in the 90s, along with millions of other Americans doing this, or hundreds of thousands doing the same thing, he's there making money. In the early 2000s, we're in Iraq and Kuwait and whatnot. He's here making money. So eventually in 2016, he decided to pick up a shield. So, there's a difference between those who live a life as a shield and those who decide to pick up a shield. I do think that at the time he served his purpose, but I do think he reminds me of a Viking king named Harold Hardrada. In the 1100s, there was a bridge in England. He thought he won the war against England, so he let part of his army go and forage and kept a little bit with himself, and the England's just regrouped and they kicked his butt. And Harold died on the bridge fighting because he messed up his battle plan. So,
Whoops.
I think there's people here for a certain time who have a purpose, and he achieved his purpose. He woke everybody up to what's really going on. Now, do I think that he might be the best person to fight it? I don't wholly agree with that. Um, we talked about some of the points, things he'll never know that you and I go through, you know, and, uh, and so I think that makes a difference. I've had to defend my family in the past, full on defense, growing up because we didn't have an easy life either. So, the difference is I've had to fight my whole life. I got my first job at 11 to help the household, working for a farm, shoveling chicken manure at $50 a day at the time, because what happened in the mid 80s, my mom had gotten deathly sick and she was pregnant at the time. And So we ended up living with somebody else, and funds got depleted from that because of the medical expenses. So it was a whole thing. So, I've had to defend my brothers and sisters. We had to fight for each other. My brother and I once got jumped by a gang. We had to fight our way to each other and out of the situation. We ended up going to hospital because they thought we were going to die. We were so badly broken from that, but one thing we learned growing up: blood in, blood out. There's no blood better than us. And as Americans, doesn't matter if we're right or on the left. We're Americans when we wake up. We're Americans when we go to bed. We have our families. We each have our hopes and dreams for our children, and we each want to make somehow a better life. Right? These are things that are common to each of us, no matter which side we're on. And this is what I'm going to fight for. We used to be a country. I'm going to throw some numbers at you. We used to be a country that, in 3 years' time, we made 225,000 war tanks. We made 2 million war trucks. We made something almost like 2 million aircraft. We pumped a warship out every 47 days out to sea. We built bases throughout the world. We built roads and infrastructure to support that. And we did that within 3 years, all of that. And now it takes us 10 years just to get permission to make a building. It takes us all this argumentation, and we still can't figure out why we're in Ukraine. After all that time, we have to run away and abandon our duty and our oath in Afghanistan. And we have a Congress who takes the same oath as any other soldier. And forget what you think about January 6th. Just take the instance of the fact that the body of Congress ran away. They're the body of Congress that declares whether or not we go to war. They're the body of government that sends our 18-year-olds off to war, and at which point that 18-year-old has to hold the line, not retreat, and possibly die in service to his oath and duty. And if the argument of their position was that their house was invaded and their first instinct was to abandon their oath and run away, they have a moral problem that has to be addressed. Because if they're going to be the body, they first act was to abandon their oath. They expect more from an 18-year-old than those 50-year-olds do for themselves. Yeah. So we need people in there who can remind us who our soul is. We've gotten away from it. We tear each other apart. We burn our cities down. We blame each other for everything, and no one looks inward. And a lot of this is because it's great to blame the politicians, but we do fire and forget when we vote. We don't do full-on citizenship duties. We don't hold our people accountable. We don't know how to. Even now we argue about who's going to do this committee chair, who's going to do that committee chair, who has real power here, who has real power there. Well, the real power is with us, and we need to wake up. We need to act on it properly and legally. And we need to be effective, and we need to get back to our moral foundations and our ethics, and we need to build for tomorrow. We need to start doing today. We need someone who's going to think about the bigger picture. And not a single candidate to date recognizes our time in history, and maybe it's big-headed, but it's factual. When Abraham Lincoln decided that we were going to have a great war to go free the slaves, they were, 87 years since the founding of our nation. When in World War II, we went to set liberty out to the world. They were 80 years since that great war. And this year, we're now 80 years since the Civil War, or since World War II, I'm sorry, since World War II. Not every generation gets an inflection point to take responsibility or have a choice in our future destiny. We do now.
Actually, the people who may be listening who are particularly, attuned to your message, how can people follow your ongoing stuff? You got events coming up. You may be releasing stuff. You have a Twitter, social. You have a website, right? But
yes.
Do you also update on social media frequently? How else can people follow your campaign?
They can follow me. They can go to the website. They can join my campaign, and I'll take all comers that want to help. And I'll need donations, obviously, to keep going in the fight, because without donations, there's only so far I can go. That part's correct. But I want this to go far. I want us to win. We need to win. We need to win for ourselves. And I don't believe anymore that I can trust any of the politicians. I mean, no disrespect to Governor DeSantis and his military service, but at the end of the day, he's still a politician and a lawyer. The only time I trust the lawyers is when they're working for me directly. And even then, I got to watch what they're doing. Yeah. With respect to Mr. Trump, he's not us. He may talk like us. He may try to act like us, but he's not us. And Joe Biden's just got to go. He's destroyed, he made us a living, walking joke throughout the world. We need to get back to having integrity. He's not it.
Well, I'm actually
You and me are,
yeah,
and voting for me is voting for yourself,
I really
you know.
appreciate you coming on the show.
And,
Um,
and, and, and,
yeah,
and the last one point I want to make is this. And this is the other kind. This is what we need to be. It doesn't matter if you're a Democrat. It doesn't matter if you're a Republican. It does not matter if you're independent. We also have to remember we challenge the world to do better. We challenge ourselves to be better than ourselves. We try to recognize there's something more than us. We had President Kennedy with Ben Bellina, and then we had Ronald Reagan with tear down that wall. And recently we had plenty of missed opportunities in Iran and Afghanistan when our message should have also been in the Arabic form, the al-kum al-kum al-hukuminik, which is to be or not to be, I hope you choose to be, and then the hunaya, which is the freedom. So there's moments that were missed. And yes, I do know a little bit of the Arabic because I had to learn the Persian Gulf tongue in order to run the port and stuff like that. And I used the Shakespeare to translate all that, and that's where that comes from.
okay. So just so you know, I actually have the most candidate interviews in the 22 election cycle, more than any other YouTuber. And feel free to watch any of those interviews and maybe contact those candidates. They've walked the same path that you were walking now, and they may also have a following that is politically minded who may be useful to yourself, right, as in terms of building the campaign that you need to make this national run. So thanks again for coming on the show. And just before you go, I guess, is there anything else that these people have to look forward to? What's coming up for your campaign? Anything?
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
setting up some dates in Texas and in Michigan. I got something coming up in Pennsylvania soon. Just waiting on the permits, and then we'll be doing that.
Wonderful. So I hope everybody once again checks out Albert Harshaw for president, and that's number 4. And yeah, thanks for coming on, man. God bless you. Yeah, have a good one. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it. I hope to do this again with you.
No problem. Yeah, I will probably be reaching back out for some discussion panels, and like I said before, right now I'm trying to organize a
Yeah, and
student
you're pretty
New York
local. I
City
think you're
event.
like 2 hours from me, so I could actually drive out to you if you're
Yeah,
up where this number is, and
yeah, we might
and
have a
do a on
political
headphone sets.
convention actually when school starts, right? Yeah, and invite all the college presidents and stuff like that, and also public housing people too. Yeah, should be a good time.
Right.
Yeah, we'll get a big audience. Sounds good. All right, end of August. That's what we're shooting for. All right, I'll be in contact. Thank you.
All right.
All right,
Is
thank you,
that
man.
end the show?
Thank you. Yeah, I'm gonna hit stop.